All right, here we go.
That fresh produce stand there, that's a beauty.
What do you listen to?
My favorite murder podcast.
Taggart and Torrance podcast.
The produce stand.
Fucking sexy.
You heard the man. It's the Produce Stand, your favorite source for everything in the universe. I'm Al, your host. Matt and Victor are on the mics. Tanya's off this evening, but tonight we are going to get to know the son of the coach's corner. And just like Dolo, we're feeling blessed to introduce our guest. He's an award-winning writer and producer with more than 40 years in the Canadian television industry. He's produced live sports, documentaries, dramas, talk shows, magazine programs, home video productions. His credits include the 88 Calgary Olympics, the 94 Lillehammer Olympics, the 96 Atlanta Olympics, 30 volumes of the Don Cherry's Rock'em Sock'em Hockey, but we all know and love him as the writer and executive producer behind Keep Your Head Up Kid, The Don Cherry Story, and The Wrath of Grapes. Please join me in making some noise for Tim Cherry!
Who wants to set the tone, boys? Who's gonna fucking set it? Yeah! Whoa! Let's get on the go, boys! Yeah, on that go, but I'm saying this team will never lose again.
Welcome to the Produce Stand, Tim. How are you now?
Thank you very much. That's a great opening. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on.
No, we really appreciate you joining us today. I mean, this is really exciting. And you know, before I started recording, I was just commenting on your background, and that's not a fake background. That's your basement, and it looks like I could probably spend hours in that basement. You've got a bunch.
I don't think so. They say behind the sweaters there are all my old Rock'em Sock'em videos that we didn't sell. So I got like thousands of them over there. I think if you went over to Dad's house and you went to his basement there, you could look at a lot of photographs and memorabilia. I have some on the wall, but not as much as Dad does.
Mm-hmm. So when you say you have the old Rock'em Sock'em in the back there, first question, what format are they in?
I have some VHS of the early ones, but mostly DVDs, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
You at least evolved into the DVD. I remember all the VHS. Like that's what I had.
I still have a lot.
A lot of the VHS.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think we switched over. We started doing DVDs around number 10 or 11, and by the time we got to probably 14 or 15, there was no more VHS. Gotcha. The switch was like that. It really was amazing.
It was quick.
How quickly we went from VHS to DVD. It was like less than 2 or 3 years. We were almost all VHS to maybe 80% VHS to 50-50 to all DVD.
Yeah.
And now
took over quickly.
And now, are you exclusively like to YouTube, or are you even producing them anymore?
No, we don't. We stopped at 30. I mean, it's. I had to license the footage from the NHL every year, and which was like a root canal many times. The NHL has always been very good. They were very good. They were very good to us in the Miniseries. But just dealing with rights and dealing with logos, and you're dealing with individual teams, you're dealing with CBAs, and you're dealing with players associations. It gets a little. It can get a little tiresome.
I can imagine. I mean, I remember having to go through licensing rights for, I think it was maybe 60 seconds of a clip from a Raptors game from Rogers for a podcast I was doing for work, and the price was astronomical, and that was like for 60 seconds. I mean, your entire video is just clips from the NHL, right? So it couldn't have been cheap.
No, the funny thing was, like, when we started it in the mid to late 80s, like there was no footage at all. Footage was worth nothing back then.
Right.
Like the CBC actually had the full game of Daryl Sittler's 10-point night against the Bruins, which Dad was coaching, and I was there at that game. And they just threw it out because they needed room. And it was taking up space.
Oh my God.
And so back then, like, footage was worth nothing. And when we started, it really wasn't a lot. Like, I would say when I started the Rock'em Sock'em and I had to pull the footage, it was maybe 90 minutes of highlights for the whole year. And by the end, I was downloading it, and it was like, I don't know, 10 terabytes worth of footage, right? So it's amazing how in that 30 years, the footage was worth nothing till it was worth,
Sure.
gold now. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're blowing my mind just to start with. Well, first of all, you said your dad coached the Sittler 10-point game. I feel like I would have. How did I not know that? Like, because I mean, that's a famous game for the Leafs anyway.
Well, you want to know the story behind the game?
Yes, please. Yeah.
So I went up to Toronto. That was one of my birthday gifts every year. I was get to go on a road trip with the Bruins. So we went up to Toronto. We go up there because I went to Toronto because my uncle still lived in Kingston, and my nephew and my niece lived in Kingston. They would come up for the game, so it was a chance to see them. But Davey Reese was in net, and Davey Reese, Gilly Gilbert was hurt, and it was Jerry Cheever's first game back from the WHA, and he hadn't really played. So Davey Reese, and he was a good goalie. He was probably 3-1 at the time. And the goals started going in from everywhere, right? They were bouncing up guys' asses into the net. And normally Dad would have pulled them, but he didn't want to put Cheevers in because Cheevers wasn't ready.
Right.
So he had to let the rookie goalie, well, yes, he was a rookie, just kind of die on the vine. And he never played a game after that in the NHL.
Oh, that's rough. But again, my mind's blown that your dad was coached during that game. And the other thing, I don't want to bury the lead. Who is your father?
Don Cherry, in case people don't know, right? Yeah.
We didn't really. I think I mentioned it.
Just dove right into Rock'em Sock'em. Yeah. Let's back up a bit.
Yeah, so let's rewind a bit. First of all, where are you speaking to us from, Tim?
I'm living in Mississauga.
You're in Mississauga. Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So, in case you didn't know, for the summer basically. So we started in June. We've been covering the two miniseries that were, I guess, on CBC. Were they originated on CBC? They were CBC productions?
Yeah, they were. I guess they were a CBC production. They were a co-production with a couple of production companies, but it was a CBC production.
Yeah, with your in tangent with your production company, I guess, right?
Yeah, E1, Entertainment One, and then ourselves and CBC.
Yeah. So we've been covering that this summer because, in case you didn't know, our podcast we cover two Canadian shows, Letterkenny and Shoresy. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And both of them created by, written by, just like you. He, a man of many hats. His name is Jared Kiso. And, right now we're in the middle of a bit of a lull in terms of, stuff that we can talk about that he's been doing. So some of our listeners have been talking about, well, why don't you cover the Don Cherry movies? Because Jared is plays the main role. He plays your father in these movies. So we finally broke down and did that, and we've been making a meal of it all summer because there are four movies, I guess, or two-parters or whatever.
Yeah, for 2 hours.
Yeah, but so we've kind of stretched them out on a weekly basis this weekend, and we just finished actually the last review last week of the last film. So the timing couldn't be.
I'll have to look for it, see what you guys said.
I think we had some nice things to say. We really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Well, we had eight episodes it took us to cover your series. Yeah. we did 45 minutes of the series at a time until we got through it all.
Yeah. And throughout the summer, one of the most said phrases, once we found out you were coming on, one of the most frequently mentioned phrases was, "We'll have to ask Tim when we have him on." And so, because we had so many questions, and luckily, well, we didn't write them down, but I with a little bit of AI help, I was able to recover what those questions were. So if you don't mind, we're going to pepper you with some questions about.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago. So I guess first one was in 2010. I believe.
Yeah, 2010. Well, so let's talk about just first of all, how this came to be. You wrote, I guess, a book about your father's life. So did the book come first, or was it kind of in tangent?
No, I think, Dad had written a bunch of books. So he's written like 2 or 3. Okay. How it kind of came about was that Dad and I were this would have been maybe 2005. Dad and I were at some event that he was at, and everybody, it was kind of the height of Coach's Corner. Yeah. And there was maybe about half the people knew Dad coached the Bruins. And the other half knew nothing about Dad's life in the minor leagues, Mom and Dad's life. I always say Dad's life, but it's Mom and Dad's life. So I asked him, I said, Dad, we should do a movie on your life in the minors. I said, because basically everything that happened in Slapshot, except the guy in the end when Ned stripped down, basically happened in Dad's life.
Right.
And I always wonder if Nancy Dowd took some of that stuff out of Dad's book or Dad's life and put it in there. He was always no, don't want to do it, no. And then around 2008, I asked him, and he says, yeah, maybe. And I started to write. Like I said, I had written before, so I started to write the script. And every, once or twice a week, I would go over to Dad's and kind of go over, and he would, change a few things, and I would ask him, how did Shore act like this, or how did this happen? And so when I got it done, it was a lot different. I wanted to end the first I didn't know there was going to be two, but I wanted to end it on Dad coaching his first game in Boston, because I wanted the story to be of a guy who wanted to make the National Hockey League as a player, but in the end, he makes the National Hockey League as something else. So I wanted it at the last shot I wanted was Jared behind the bench, and you see number 4 jump over the boards, and Jared would break the fourth wall and look at the camera and say, 4 years ago, I was an unemployed construction worker, and now I'm coaching Bobby Orr, and they say there's no God. That's how I wanted it to end. And so it was good. Dad liked that. So I took it to CBC. I took it to Sally Cato. And with Dad being at CBC, I jumped a lot of the food chain and went to Sally and Helen and Anamascus. And they really liked it. And then they had to take it farther up the food chain. And then they decided that they wanted it just one night, but they wanted to end it at the start of Coach's Corner. And then, so I rewrote it. And then they said, no, we missed too much stuff. Let's do 2 nights, but end it at Coach's Corner. So that's how it got started. I just kind of asked Dad, and he was like, no. And then one day he said, yeah, maybe we should. So that's how it got started.
And that's why it kind of became a 2-parter. That first film, it was
first. Yeah. Because originally it was 2 parts, ending in Boston. They wanted one. Then they thought the story was really kind of convoluted because there was so many aspects of Dad's story to then. Then he says, well, let's do the Coach's Corner, but let's do 2 nights and end it. Him being unemployed type of thing. So
at any point early on, how was your dad's feeling about you taking on this project, or was he excited about the idea of his story being told?
I think he liked it. I think he was excited at the time, but then when you get into the grind of I'd write maybe 10 pages and I'd go over to his house and we kind of rewrite it and stuff like that. That was, it became a bit of a grind. And then what happened was when we were shooting, we shot in Winnipeg. You're kind of in a sweet spot to get the rinks because you have to go after basically the hockey season ends. So that's kind of in the middle of the playoffs, but before they take the ice out of these smaller rinks, right? So Dad wasn't there for most of the shooting. He came in for maybe the last 2 weeks of the shooting. I think we shot 6 weeks, and Dad was there for the last 2.
Okay.
It was on me. The shooting was extremely stressful, just because I was too close to the bone. And I'd walk into a set oh, that's not what the Rochester American dressing room looked like. But nobody knew what the Rochester American dressing looked like except for the person playing the Rochester Americans back then, right? So I had to get over that type of thing.
Well, the first thing that strikes me with the movie is the period of the piece, right? And I mean, the chain link. There was no glass, but plexiglass back then. So you had the chain link, with boards. I guess that had to be retrofitted, right? Because you didn't find an arena in Winnipeg that had chain link. No,
we had to retrofit all that stuff. Our production designer did a great job doing that, and that's what it was for CBC. It was kind of an expensive movie because you're doing a period piece. You need to retrofit the rinks. You need some of the cars. You need the clothes.
The music, even, right? I mean,
the music. Yeah, you had to get the music, and we got some BTO music on, and so Randy Bachman helped with that. We met him up in Winnipeg, and he helped with a couple of stuff. So, so it was a huge I've been in doing little dramas, but just day stuff. I was never a 6-week movie. Traveling to rinks and stuff like that. It was an eye-opening experience for me.
Is that's how long it took? 6 weeks?
I think it was a 6-week shoot. Yeah.
Wow. Victor?
So obviously you got all these stories from your dad, but
Yeah.
in the way the story was told, even though it ends with him ending up in the NHL as a player, he got really in a way of his own self several
Right.
times. And
Right.
so how I mean, again, this probably came from your dad, but how did he feel about kind of being portrayed that way as well? We've got that part of the story as well.
No, he was like like when we sat down, we talked about that. Dad says you got to make me kind of look like an asshole. He goes dragging mom around, and we're not, and realizing getting into a battle with Harry Sinden and Eddie Shore and all that. He says, I don't want to be like making excuses. Oh, poor me. I want people to kind of. He said, I want people to kind of say, well, you deserved it a little bit.
Mm.
So he was good at that. He's always been good about making sure that he's not kind of put in this light that he was the good guy and he was the downtrodden and all that. That hey, he went to Three Rivers, Quebec because he knocked down the coach. That's dad's fault.
Yeah.
That's on him.
Yeah, he's the enemy of his own story.
Right. Yeah. They said he was the protagonist, the antagonist in the story. He was both.
Yeah. And then on characters, the one, and I feel like this probably came naturally because it came through in the story very well, was the love from your mom and the way she was portrayed in the story. We talked about her a lot. Was it Sarah Manninen, who I think who played
Yeah.
played Rose? Did a fantastic job from our perspective,
Yeah.
but like she really felt like the rock of the whole story. And was that an active conversation? Like I know it's a lot to think back on, but like that's how we saw it. Like she was always there, always the sort of the guiding needle, regardless of what your dad was doing. She kept the family together. It really felt that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that was an important. I mean, I think part of the reason why it did so well, and a lot of when we were signing Rock'em Sock'em, and a lot of women come up and say, I really like the movie, and I think part of it was because of the way Sarah played mom, and mom was kind of like, as you say, she was the rock that kept everything going. And I actually at one point early on, and it got shot down pretty quick. I wanted to kind of do the story through the eyes of mom, have mom be the narrator. Because if you look, I think the two greatest sports movies are Bull Durham and Susan Sarandon. She's the narrator,
right?
And then you look at Slapshot. Nancy Dowd wrote it. So I think that it would have been interesting to kind of do through mom's eyes. But then I thought, maybe I think people wanted to kind of see dad more, type of thing. So we did that. But yeah, it was important to show mom and she was. I mean, she was the rock of our family the whole time. I was a little bit easier for me because I was just in Rochester and kind of stayed there till we went to Boston. But my sister Cindy, I mean, she was all over the place. Like she was in Springfield and Three Rivers and Kitchener, and then every summer they would either move back to Hershey or they would move back to Kingston, right? So I think Cindy and mom and dad moved like 40 times or 30 times, in their travels, and that was mom keeping everything together.
Yeah. Did I hear right in your interview with Toronto Mike, your sister wrote a book about this as well, and there was thoughts of maybe basing at least the second series on her book, or was that, did I get the timing of that wrong?
No, that timing is wrong.
Oh.
My sister, she wrote during COVID, she wrote a book.
Oh, okay, during COVID.
On it, and then it was such a thick book because of all the stuff that she's been through, that they broke it into two releases, and unfortunately, Cindy passed away just before the first one got released, and it became a bestseller.
Yeah,
and then they released the second one. Her son, my nephew Dell, released it around about 7 months ago, the second one. So no, it was just like it. I think what happened was it was the first one was such a smash hit for CBC that they wanted to do another one fairly quickly, and so that was put into motion pretty quick after the first one.
Our condolences on your sister. Yeah, it's sad to hear the news of her passing, and
yeah, thanks.
So let's talk about the first story a little bit, because we have some questions about that, obviously, that built up over the summer. My first question is, do you still hate Montreal?
No, I don't. You know, the funny thing is, I was just talking about this to somebody the other day, that I hated Montreal when I was a kid. Like, I just hated them, and I never, I'd been around hockey all my life, right? Since I was 2 years old, I was going to the dressing rooms in Rochester. And then I remember one day I was driving in with Dad it was a regular season game in Montreal, was in Boston. And Dad had a gift. And I said, "Who's the gift for?" And he goes, "Scotty." I go, "Scotty who?" He goes, "Scotty Bowman." I go, "What are you giving a gift to Scotty Bowman for?" He goes, "Well, he just had a little boy, and I'm going to, this is a gift." And I was just flabbergasted that Dad was fraternizing with the enemy.
Right.
That he would give a gift to Scotty Bowman, who I just like Montreal, I just hated. And then, but as you get older, you learn there's a line between the game and after the game and stuff like that. So no, I don't hate Montreal. I was rooting for him in the playoffs this year. So,
but was your dad?
Same with Dad. Yeah. Dad doesn't. Dad likes Toronto, he likes Boston, Toronto, and then Montreal, Edmonton. Those along going down that line. But no, he doesn't. There's no hatred there anymore.
So interesting, because especially being that close to the hockey world, I'm not the hugest sports fan in the world, but I definitely understand that when it comes to Leafs and Montreal, there's very little line between it. It's like you're either one or the other. And actually, this might be one of the only documented moments I've heard someone say, "I'll cheer for both."
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I think the hatred or dissonance towards Montreal has shifted towards Boston, for many Toronto fans. Ever since 2013, really.
We don't need to speak of it anymore. No, you're right, Victor.
Yeah. It's, and that's, that's just the way that it is. And plus Montreal, up until last year, they haven't really been very competitive, right? So, whereas Boston has been competitive throughout. So it's,
it's hard for me, because Dad coached the Bruins and coached Colorado and even in Rochester, that the games meant so much. You look at Game 7 against Montreal in the semifinals with the Too Many Men. My life's path was going to be determined by who scored the next goal.
Right.
If Boston scored the next goal, I was going to stay in Boston. If Montreal scored the next goal, I was going to move somewhere. I was going to move away from my friends, going to move from my high school and go somewhere else. So when you have so much riding in a game like that once there's not that much riding on it, you root for them. But if they lose, well, it's not like I got to move type of thing, right? I said it's going from playing poker and the ante's $1,000 and then playing poker and the ante's 10 cents, right? It's tough to get excited.
Talk about that a little bit as a kid. I mean, I imagine it'd be kind of like being in a military family where you are moving so much and you can't really put roots down anywhere because you don't know where you're going to be the next year. How tough was that on you? You're going from school to school, you're having to make new friends everywhere you go.
Yeah, it wasn't too hard on me because I went from Rochester to Saugus, Massachusetts, to then North Andover, then to Colorado, then to Mississauga. My sister was a lot harder because she was, as they say, going all the minor leagues. But it's a little bit different in the sense of if Mom and let's say when they went to Kitchener, there was already kind of a supportive group there. That there was a group of wives, there's a group of girlfriends, there was a group of doctors. So, there was a group of babysitters that they all use, and they all in those days, they all went out after for, a beer or they all went out together as a team. So it was, you're getting used to it, but it wasn't like you were starting, you didn't know anybody, right? For Mom and Dad, Cindy, and Cindy quickly made friends with the kids of the other players and stuff like that. So yeah, we never really kind of laid down roots till 1960, 62, 63. I was born in 63. And then for the longest time, Rochester,
spent a lot of time. Spent a lot of time in New York.
And then eventually moving up to Toronto, Mississauga, and now this is our roots. So
yeah. So, I mean, something I learned, I didn't know about this until I watched the movie, was that before your dad left, or after your dad left Boston and before joining Colorado, he had gotten that offer from the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, you know, Matt says he's kind of he's a newish sports fan, but Victor and I are long suffering Leaf fans. So, and we remember the Ballard years. How different? I mean, have you ever contemplated how different your life would have been had your dad taken the Toronto gig, because it would have been for working for Harold Ballard?
Yeah. I don't know how Harold and Dad would have got along. I think they might have got along I think they would have had the same type of relationship that Dad and Harry Sinden had. Was they probably would have got along for the first few years, and then it would have went sour. And you don't know what happens after that. I mean, the 1 year in Colorado was really, really hard on Dad.
Yeah.
I think it came down to Colorado and Philadelphia. And if you remember, the year that Dad went to Colorado, Pat Quinn took over Philly, and they set a record for the most wins at the start of the season. I think they went undefeated in 27 games. And Colorado, it was a struggle. And then Dad realized that the general manager wasn't going to work with Dad and Ray Muron, and so that was tough. So I mean, it would have been interesting. It's just, what would have happened with that? You know what I mean? Like, he probably never would have went on Coach's Corner. He probably would have went from Toronto and then to someplace else, and who knows?
Potentially incarcerated. What's the word? Arrested for being violent towards Ballard.
Yeah. Yeah, as I say, you don't know how as I say, I think they would have got all right for the first couple of years, and then I think they would have went to war, right? So, and Toronto had a really good team back then. I mean, they were just a few players away from they had the same problem we had in Boston. You kept running into Montreal,
right? Like
nobody was beating Montreal then, right? And they just kept running into Philly. Then they have to run into Montreal, and then we ran into Philly and had to run into Montreal. They had a really good team. They were just maybe one or two players away from, or one or two breaks from going to the finals. But yeah, it would have been interesting, Dad and Ballard. I mean, they met a few times when Dad was doing Coach's Corner, because originally the Coach's Corner set was in Maple Leaf Gardens,
right?
So they bumped into each other a few times, but they kind of got along, jokingly, but to working together, it would have been maybe a year or two.
Right. Now, when we told our listeners that you were going to come on, and it's been interesting again this summer going through over these movies, because 80% of our audience is American, right? So it was interesting to hear about how much of the story our American listeners knew. And I mean, obviously those in the Massachusetts area would have heard about him. And actually one of the questions we have here is from our friend Joey in Colorado, and no pressure here, but he'd like to know who maybe was your favorite team that your dad, coached or worked for while you guys were going around.
Well, I think, the Bruins for sure. I mean, the Bruins were really a lot of fun. People say, oh, they were a family and stuff like Dad and the players were really, really close. And I think that became his undoing. And they used to come over to our house in North Andover during the summer, like Terry O'Reilly and Peter McNabb and Bobby Schmutz. Mike Milbury just lived down the road. They would always come. We had a pool and a tennis court, and they would always come over and play tennis in the summer and go for a swim and hang around for barbecues. So I don't know if the players do that now with their coach, but and Dad would go out drinking with them after the game. And there was a lot of camaraderie with Boston. And I think that's, losing that game 7 in overtime, I think was super hard, because we knew that was it. Like, that was going to be the end of, Dad was going to leave. And Montreal broke up then, right? Dryden retired. Scotty went to Buffalo. That whole kind of era of Boston versus Montreal and the Leafs, kind of with the Sittler McDonald era, that all ended that year, that 79 season.
And then the Islanders
took over for 4 years. Yeah.
It was interesting because what you just talked about there was definitely came through in the series as well, with like the closeness and the community with the team. And even there was one scene, and I don't recall if that was the catalyst was after that game, but even when the media showed up at your door in one of the scenes, and your mom just let them in, say, yeah, come on in, and they were all just hanging out and just did a casual interview with your dad sitting on the couch. And it's like you could tell there was just this comfort that everybody, from the players to the media, everyone that was close to him, or at least he accepted into his circle, was like part of the group, and there was a respect across the board, it seemed.
Yeah. I mean, it was a different time back then with reporters. I mean, I think they're a bit more professional. You didn't have social media. And, Dad was good with the reporters in the sense of they would call him up on a Sunday night, say, Don, they go, Grapes, I gotta do something for tomorrow and I don't have anything. And then Dad would sit and give him a story. And then in turn, some things would happen on the road that would be on Twitter where they just said, we got a good thing. We're just going to let this slide and didn't report it. So it really was a kind of a end of an era for Dad and for us. And I think the NHL kind of shifted from Montreal, Boston, Philly to say the Islanders kind of rose. Philly kind of came up after that type of thing. So yeah, it was pretty sad to have to leave Boston.
There was a line, I think it was in the first movie, where your dad said, or at least in the movie, he says that leaving home as a teenager to pursue hockey was something he regretted ever since. What brought that line about? Like, what did he mean by that?
I think I think he meant what we kind of wrote was that Dad left school at grade 8 and he went to play in Barrie and then went to Windsor, then back to Barrie, and then you didn't get drafted back then. You signed a C card, you signed a card and you were owned by the teams, and then you signed with the Bruins. And when he was retiring, he thought he was going to be a construction worker in Rochester because he worked construction with Whitey Smith was his best friend, who was his foreman. And they worked for Kodak, which was headquarters in Rochester. And Dad kind of Mom settled into life of they're going to be a construction worker for the rest of his life. And then what happens? The recession came in, and Dad lost his job, and then he kind of regretted that he didn't have a trade, didn't have an education, and all the labor jobs were basically gone. So that's what that's what he meant by that. He just like my uncle went the other way. We didn't talk much about Uncle Rich just because we didn't have time.
Sure.
But my uncle went the other way. My uncle became a principal, my dad's brother, and he went to school and got an education, got a master's and everything like that. So, but that's what he meant by that was looking back, he didn't have a plan B.
Fair enough. He wasn't prepared if this didn't work out.
No, and I think all the guys back then that played hockey, they all said the same thing. They thought it was going to last forever. And unfortunately it doesn't. And a lot of them weren't prepared for what happens after hockey. I mean, they were only making $5,000 a year playing hockey. Then they would always have these part-time jobs in the summer. A lot of guys were farmers, but a lot of guys just kind of did part-time stuff in the summer. Even the NHL guys had part-time jobs in the summer back then. And then when the hockey was gone, Dad didn't know what he was going to do.
Yeah. Did you ever play hockey?
I played hockey right up till I was 13. And then I got sick, and in the movie they showed I got the transplant, and that ended my hockey career.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah.
And
you could have been a star.
Yeah. And how have you been, like, health-wise? Everything good?
Oh yeah, everything's good. Knock on wood. That my kidney's doing well, and that all. I mean, and that was another big kind of move, especially more for Mom. Of I had the transplant at Massachusetts General, and then we had to leave, and I had my doctors there and everything.
Yeah.
And then we had to leave, right? And just get new doctors, and that was tough for Mom. Like, she was upset. And one of the reasons we went to Colorado was they had a very strong transplant units, because back then in 78 when I had the transplant, they were still they weren't the norm back then.
Yeah.
And so when we left, I was a little worried. I think my mom was more worried. And then when we went to Colorado, we had to find a transplant doctor and everything like that. So but again, that's part of having to your father being an NHL player or an NHL coach, or sports in general, I guess.
Yeah. So before we bring this to Shorzy and Jared Kiso, I just want to talk a little bit about the casting of Sarah Manninen as your mom, because I wasn't aware of how perfectly she was cast until the second miniseries, when we saw the shot for shot remake of the fiberglass insulation commercial. I'm like, oh my God, like it was perfect. Like she did such a great job.
We tracked down all the original commercials going through it.
Well, the funny thing with Sarah was we didn't even do a casting call for her.
No,
like it was the forgive me, I'm trying to think of the casting agent. She just said, we have Sarah Manninen and she wants to do it, and that was it. We didn't even do a casting call for Mom. And she was just perfect. And Sarah was great. And the great thing was that her and Jared, just the chemistry, both of them are great people. I mean, that's the main thing. They're nice people. They're easy to work with. If something screwed up, or they never got mad, or they just kind of rolled with the punches. And so she was really good. And Cindy got a lot of the jewelry that you see her wearing in the movie is actually my mom's jewelry.
Oh wow!
Cindy went down and got, and I got to tell you how strange things are. So Sarah wanted to know about Mom's accent, because Mom was born in Pennsylvania,
right?
And we call it the Pennsylvania twang. There's a Pennsylvania twang. No, my mom really didn't have it, but my aunt and all my mom's relatives did. They were all second and third generation Italian, but they had this Pennsylvania twang. So Sarah on her own says, I'm going to call just to talk to somebody from Pennsylvania. So she called the, I guess it's like a legion, but like some lodge she called,
right,
in Hershey. And the guy picked up the phone and she said, hi, my name's Sarah Manninen, and I'm doing a thing on Rose Cherry. And it was somebody who was related to our family.
Really?
Who knew Tootsie, because my mom was nicknamed Tootsie. And her and Sarah talked for hours on
That's
Mom
amazing.
and what it was like in Hershey, and a little bit of the little bit of the Pennsylvania twang and all that. So it was funny. A lot of like little things like that happened. But no, she was just fantastic. In fact, when she was on set, my dad couldn't be on set. He'd get too upset. He'd have to leave.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. So I mean, going from that perfectly cast role to, I mean, Jared wasn't a slam dunk for this role, which is hard to believe now after watching both series. We can't imagine anyone else doing this. But why don't you tell the story quickly of how the CBC didn't want Jared?
No. And I think more so it was, I think they were worried that he had to carry he was an unknown,
right,
and didn't have a lot of big parts under his belt, and they were worried that if he could carry it, and which I think was a legitimate worry. But so they did a casting, and I think they cast everybody from in North America, and we got the DVD of the casting, and so myself, my dad, my sister sat down, and there was 3 DVDs. There was like 20 actors on each DVD. And I said, let's sit down. We'll watch them all. When we'll just write down who we want. And like, we'll do an order from first top 5.
And you're doing this independently. So you didn't know
all this independently. So we wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so we wouldn't kind of influence each other. Jared was like the third one. Jared was like the third guy we saw. And then when we were done, we said, well, there's only one guy. It's the third guy smoking. Jared had a cigarette at his audition. And we all said, well, it's the third guy.
Yeah.
So, and then Jeff Wolna, who was the director, he saw it, and he just, absolutely. Laszlo Barna, who was a producer. Yeah. And then CBC was just like, they were just, I think they were afraid to pull the trigger. That was the problem. And then it was just, auditions, and Jared kept coming back, and we just kept saying, we want Jared. And then it was a phone call with the president of CBC at the time, and he said, there's absolutely no way we're having Jared. And again, I think like the other CBC people wanted Jared, but just nobody wanted to make the decision.
Sure.
And it was Jeff Wolna that said, he goes, Jared's going to be a star. And he says, and we're going to let everybody know you're the guy that passed on him. And then he said, "Well, go F yourselves. It's on you." And then he hung up the phone, and
Wow.
the rest is history.
Shades
So,
of Ralph Mellanby sticking up for your dad.
Yeah. No, actually, I think Ralph wouldn't have cared. He would have cast Jared. I just think that you're in a corporate or you're in a big CBC. You have to, no matter what people say, you have to answer to other people. And let's face it, if Jared bombed, that would have been horrible, right?
Yeah.
Like it would have been horrible. And it was just, and they asked. I think Jared was really good because it was an interpretation of Dad, not a imitation. And I think that's what was the thing. He had Dad's swagger, and the other guys, you could see Jared was an athlete, and the other guys, Jared was and to me was an athlete who was an actor as opposed to an actor trying to be an athlete.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference.
Yeah, that's what makes the Shoresy such a great show, is that he hires athletes first and actors second. So the hockey scenes look very legitimate, and we've been there live watching them shoot scenes for Shoresy, and it's amazing to watch because it's basically a hockey team running drills because they're all former players, right?
Right.
Which is amazing to see. Now, you're right. He had to act not only your dad as young, but also well into, later into his career. And this is 5 years before Letterkenny is a thing. I understand. So it was a big risk that you guys were asking the CBC to do, but he knocked it out of the park. I mean, his mannerism, especially when he's playing the older version of your dad on Hockey Night in Canada, like the way he uses his hands on this desk and leans into Ron MacLean, just amazing. Like he embodied your father.
Yeah, no, as they say, it was his interpretation, but he had the mannerism and the swagger, and that was what But he had the swagger of Dad as a hockey player, and he had the swagger of Dad on Coach's Corner, and you say you can't direct somebody to do that, right? You can't say, okay, now more swagger, like either you have that or you don't, and he had it in spades.
Oh yeah, well, and all the scenes, all the Hockey Night in Canada scenes were just so much fun to watch. And even again, these two guys know much better than I do, but went back and watched some of the like for likes, and it was uncanny to see how much he took on and embodied your dad in those scenes. And it was a blast.
Yeah.
Now, talking about that second series, and there's a few things that were a little kind of gray on. One, when Ralph leaves the CBC, like when he gets your dad re-signed for a new deal, but then announces that he's leaving for the Olympics. Was that a condition of your dad's re-signing, or was it just because the Olympics were he wanted to do the Olympics and leave Hockey Night in Canada?
I think Ralph, he wanted to do the Olympics. I mean, like he was the executive producer of the whole Olympics.
Right. Oh, okay.
And
so it was a big deal. Yeah.
It was a big deal. Like this was like, he was the guy that was running, like, and when there's two kind of broadcasts when you watch the Olympics, there's the host broadcast, which broadcasts every event, and it all goes into the main media, and then the different countries pick what they want to see, like pick what show or sport they want to watch.
Yeah.
And Ralph was going to be the head of all that.
Wow.
So, and then I think he was Atlanta, and then I think he was Calgary and Atlanta, and then this was like a big deal for Ralph. I still think at the time CBC wasn't. I don't even think CBC actually owned Hockey Night in Canada at that time. I still think that was Molson's. So Molson's owned Hockey Night in Canada, and Molson's really liked Dad because Dad connected with the beer drinkers, right?
Sure, yeah.
So
you interpreted that in the series.
Yeah, great scene in the boardroom where they're all drinking wine and he's the only one drinking beer. That's
and that happened too. That happened with Dad. And I said, you're not making friends. And I don't care. He said they shouldn't be. He goes, I was right. They shouldn't be drinking wine. They should be drinking their own product. So that's where that came from.
So I guess you went on to work under Mellanby then for the Olympics, right? If you were also working on the Olympics.
Yeah, not I was way down the totem pole, but I worked on the Calgary, the bobsled and luge in Calgary, and then in Lillehammer. I worked for CTV there. I did the hockey. That's they got the gold medal or the silver medal. The Swedes beat them with the Forsberg goal.
Yeah.
And then in Atlanta, I was doing field hockey because you're Canadian, so you got to know hockey. So
Yeah.
we did me and the guys from Hamilton and Buffalo did the field hockey. So, but we saw Ralph he'd come in and give everybody a pep talk and everything like that. Ralph is a great guy, and he is the godfather of sports television, not only in Canada but in the U.S. I mean, his legacy is just undeniable how important he was.
He definitely had an effect on how sports were covered moving forward, right? I mean, your feelings. This is very new news. Any thoughts on Hockey Night in Canada ceasing?
Well, I think that writing was on the wall for a while.
Mhm.
I don't think for the people in the industry that went they're gobsmacked. I think they're lying or they don't know what happened.
Yeah.
From what I understood was when Rogers bought the first $1 billion, was it $5 billion thing, that it came from the NHL, and I would imagine it came from Gary Bettman, that you strike a deal with CBC and keep Hockey Night in Canada because the NHL didn't want them to be the bad guys that they killed Hockey Night in Canada. But I think over those 5 years, you could kind of see that they lost the music, and now it's that iconic music's on some stupid show on TSN,
Mhm.
and I just think it was going that way, and now it's just forever. The thing I can't get over is now, like for the Leaf games, you're going to have to watch some of them on Prime, and some of the playoff games you're going to watch on Prime.
Yeah, it's sacrilegious.
Which is
It's
just
so
like
annoying.
wow, like how
Yeah.
things have changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're no one's foolish to know that. I mean, Hockey Night Canada was your dad, right? Like, there's no way around it. Like, it started for him, but he carried it all those years. So it's like any kind of show. It doesn't matter if it's like a real to life thing or a sitcom or whatever. As soon as you remove sort of the main element of what made something successful, that's
Yeah.
usually the point where things begin to go downhill and the inevitable happens. So
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think if anyone's surprised by it, it was definitely part of Canadiana, as you will, but I don't think anyone's surprised.
Yeah. Well, I remember, I don't know if you guys remember, but when Ralph Mellanby was doing it in the 70s, they used to have shootout, right? So they would get like be Mike Palmetier versus Guy Lafleur and,
Mhm.
Ken Dryden versus, John Rattel, and they would have a shootout, and they would have so I think you were looking forward more to the intermission on the shootout, who was going to win this tournament
Right.
than the game. And I just think I don't know if it's money or just laziness that it's just people talking now, and it's lost the Canadiana, and but I can see what they were saying is if we put a guy that tried to do what Dad did, I mean, it wouldn't be fair to that guy, right? Let's say, they said you should have got Brian Burke or you should have got John Tortorella or somebody to replace you. I mean, that wouldn't have been fair to that guy to do that.
No. It would only work if they it created a whole new show around that person. Right. Even that would have been a stretch, but you couldn't bring in someone to do him, call it Hockey Night Canada, and expect the same.
Yeah, because they would just say, "Oh, somebody's just trying to copy what Don Cherry did," but also, I don't think we can understate, and you guys really captured it well in the second series, the chemistry between Don and Ron. They had great chemistry, and let's talk about your dad's relationship with Ron MacLean now for a bit. Like, they were great together. They balanced each other really, really well.
Yeah.
And Ron, even I loved how in the movie you show Ron pushing back, on your dad when he needed to, right? So talk about that. I mean, back then, how they got along and how they're getting along now.
Well, back then, I mean, I think it took a while for them to kind of get their groove, which, because Dad was, he had Dave Hodge, and Dave Hodge was kind of dry. Yeah. And I think Gabe Hodge throwing that pen was, I think he was ready. He wasn't, I think he was ready to move on, Dave Hodge.
Yeah.
And so when Ron came, it just took a while for them to kind of get their, I want to see their act, because it wasn't an act, just kind of get their back and forth together. Mm-hmm. And, they like in the summer, they did see each other. So basically what happened, Edmonton wins the Stanley Cup. we'll see you, next year. And Dad and Ron would go out and have a beer, and then they would talk to each other just the Saturday before or the Friday before the first broadcast, right?
Yeah.
And I think part of that was to keep it fresh,
Right.
because I think if you're with somebody so much and you're doing that back and forth, then it starts to become an act.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you try to make it realistic, and it comes off as an act. So then even during the year, they might go out for lunch once in a while or go out for dinner. Now they did travel a lot together, because back
Sure.
in the day,
Yeah.
they would Hockey Night in Canada would go on the road,
Mm-hmm.
and but now they just do it out of the studio the whole time. And then like nowadays, Dad's 92, doesn't get around as much as he used to. There's been a lot of things said about Ron and Dad, and I really felt bad for Ron when this whole thing went down. And a lot of people are going to be like, why would you say that? Was that, I just, if it was Ralph Mellanby, if this was Ralph Mellanby, situation happened with Ralph Mellanby or John Shannon or Scott Moore or, another executive producer, they would have went out and said, Don made a statement. We can't accept it. I'm firing him. We're moving on. Da da da. Then they would have taken the slings and arrows.
Yeah.
For the corporation to make Ron kind of do that, then he became the bad guy, right? Like you needed a villain, right? And there was kind of a faceless corporation.
Yeah.
You needed that, that antagonist, and then he became that. And that, which I don't think was fair to Ron. I think that they should have protected him more and protected the brand more. And I feel bad that a lot of that stuff has happened to Ron. So, they haven't talked to each other in a while. Of course, it's summer. I don't even know if Ron's where he is now.
Yeah.
But, I just wish it would have ended better for both of them, because they fought a lot of battles together. They fought a lot of battles together.
Yeah. Yeah.
With each other and against each other in a few times, right?
Yeah, well, for sure. Like I'm not against each other, but more so against the higher ups.
Sure,
right?
sure.
They were constantly getting shit for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even to the point where CBC asked Dad to not honor the fallen soldiers.
Yeah.
And because people were writing in anything that Dad did, people complained, right? Like and they were saying that
part
Dad
of his
was
brand, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they said, well, you're militarizing this Hockey Night in Canada. And, so the guy says, would you think of not doing it? Dad goes, well, stop, but I'm going to tell everybody that you made me stop. And the guy goes, no, all right, never mind. Just keep going.
Oh, wow.
So, but it was a lot of things, a lot of little things that they had to fight for each other, with each other and for each other. So it's kind of sad to kind of see the way it all kind of ended.
Yeah. So I agree with you that it was completely unfair to Ron in terms of him being made the scapegoat. At the same time, he continued working, and he continued to be. It kind of rolled over, and then people forgot, and he continued to kind of be the guy. Whereas Don, for me as a big fan of hockey, big fan of Don, and without making this political at all, I felt that he kind of got a raw end of the deal in terms of, up until that happened, everybody considered him to be a national treasure. Yes, they were annoyed by some of the things that he was saying and stuff like that, but regardless, he was kind of the national treasure. And after that happened, it became a real divide where it wasn't cool, especially at that time, to be cheering for Don. And I think, I thought that was equally, if not more so, unfair to Don, the way that it happened. In one of the in the second story, there was a time where they said, "Hey, let's just write out your contract, and at the end, we're not going to renew it." And then, of course, they they got a new executive, and then he liked Don, and they stayed on. But I felt that Don didn't say anything that was more controversial than the things that he said prior, right? So they could have done the same thing and said, "Hey, Don, we don't like what you're saying. We're going to write out your contract. We're not going to renew it, and just have your hurrah." I mean, that would have been the right way to handle it. But instead, Rogers felt that they needed to do it that way, and they made Ron the scapegoat. The whole thing was just smelled really, really bad. But I came out just feeling really bad for Don, and I wish that these movies had kind of become popular again after that, so people could learn what a national treasure he really is to this day, to this country. He was a fantastic hockey player that got in his own way. He was one of the best coaches in the NHL, and then made the CBC kind of what it was this whole time. So I just, I didn't like the way it ended either, but for different reasons.
Yeah. Well, I mean, appreciate that. I mean, that was good. I mean, Dado, I don't know if you guys ever watched the Rick Mercer show.
Oh, of course.
Rick Mercer. So he did a whole bunch with Dad. I think Dad did 2 or 3 shows with him. And at the last show, the last thing Rick said, he says, this is going to end badly, And Dad goes, oh yeah, I know people are just waiting for the train wreck.
Yeah.
And, you look back and go, God, how apropos that was, right? That it was going to end like that. But yeah, I mean, it's, you just wish different people would have handled it better. But it's, how many years ago was that now? And, you just kind of move, for me anyway. And I think for Dad, you kind of move on. And I said to Dad, I go, why don't you explain what Rogers wanted you to do? They wanted you to apologize and they wanted you to do this. You wanted to do that. I said, you should get your version of the story out more. And Dad says, it sounds like I'm complaining. And that was his big thing. Never explain, never complain.
Yeah.
And he goes, that sounds like I'm bitch. It sounds like I'm complaining. And he says, I went on and said I wouldn't have used the word you people, but I said it enough. I'm not going to do it anymore. And that was it. So that was his reasoning.
Yeah.
Since he left, you guys went on to produce a pretty popular podcast on YouTube for a while there. So those who were missing your dad on TV were able to continue watching and listening to him on the podcast. I mean, how'd that go?
It was good. I mean, I think that Dad and I had talked about doing a podcast, before. And my nephew, he was he went to school and took radio and television, and so he kind of knew that side more than I did. But I think the problem was that Dad was under contract with not only Rogers to do a radio Hockey in Canada, but he was working with Brian Williams doing the radio show,
right?
And so he couldn't do it. But as soon as Dad got got fired, Del and I kind of jumped into thing and said, well, let's put up a podcast and let's do it on the Sunday. So Dad got fired on the Monday. We did our first podcast on the Monday. And it went good. It took Dad a little, when Dad was talking, he was rushing through everything. I said, Dad, we got as much time as you want. Don't have 7 minutes.
Right.
You can do, and so I think it kind of took us a little while again to kind of get into our groove. And I think people liked Dad's take on what was happening that week.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also like hearing the stories about Eddie Shore and the minor leagues and stuff like that.
You mentioned Brian Williams, and I completely forgot. Your dad and he did that Grapevine, right, for a segment on the Fan for many, many years.
Over 30 years.
Yeah, loved the segment. How did Brian? What did he think of the depiction of him in the movies? Because he doesn't come off very well in the movies.
Brian didn't say too much. I tell you, the one guy who didn't like the way he came across, Bobby Orr.
No,
he thought he goes, that guy couldn't even skate. He didn't even look like me. He said, the guy you got to play Phil looked like Phil. He just got some bum off the street. I said, no, he wasn't a bum. He's a good looking guy.
Yeah.
He didn't like that.
Yeah, the Esposito role was perfectly cast. He was perfect. Yeah. Amazing. Bringing this back to Shoresy just real quick, kind of last question on that end. Because you answered on Toronto Mike. I hope you can answer it here. Because when the reason we wanted to cover it, not only Jared Kiso portraying your dad, but just the parallels between the movies and the Shoresy character and show. I mean, there's a Eddie Shore is part of your dad's story, a big part of your dad's story, and then we have this character named Shoresy who isn't the nicest player.
Right.
I mean, what do you think of those parallels? Do you think there's something there?
I think the parallels. I think are the of minor hockey. You know what I mean? Of playing hockey in Sudbury or Kitchener or Three Rivers or wherever where Dad was playing. There was Eddie Shore was one of the more famous guys, but there were a lot of bad guys been playing hockey, and there was a lot of dirty guys. Like the two, we had the Larry Zidell actor, Sean Bell, who played Larry Zidell. Like Dad said, he was one of the most vicious guys in hockey of all time. And then there was another guy that we didn't put in because we just didn't have enough time to put in, Connie Madigan, and he's in Slapshot. He skates out, and he's called Mad Dog in Slapshot, but that was his real nickname, Connie Madigan. Dad says he was like crazy. Like, no, he was like one of the most vicious guys and toughest guys that he ever played against. And so those guys, I just think that tough hockey, I think Jared did a good job of older guys playing for fun or playing not for money or glory, or maybe glory, but not playing for a paycheck, playing a real rough brand of hockey. And so, yeah, I see that, but I see it, I look at it and I go, that could be the Rochester Americans sometimes, you know what I mean? The way the stuff was. So, and, Shorzy, that's a great hockey name. Can't go wrong with that, right?
Tim, I want to be conscious of your time. We're at an hour. Do you mind if we just take another 10 minutes? And
Sure. No, I'm good. So.
All right, cool. I just have a few listener questions, then we'll get to our final round of questions here. Charlie from Massachusetts is actually on the live stream, is going to so he talking about Eddie Shore. He was wondering if you were to pen an Eddie Shore biopic, what actor would you choose to play Eddie?
Well, I think for Stephen McCaddy, in the older days, in the younger days, I'm trying to think. You'd have to have, John the guy that always plays Stamos, the tough English guy, the tough guy,
Jason Statham.
Yeah,
Jason Statham.
Shore was incredibly tough.
Oh, okay.
He was vicious. He could fight. He used his stick, but he took so much abuse, and he changed hockey quite a bit. I mean, somebody should do his story, the drama of his story. I tried to pitch a bio of him a bunch of times, but getting hockey bios done is almost impossible in Canada.
Oh yeah.
But the way because he got Alan Eagleson into the league, because the players went on strike against him because of not proper medical, just some of the other stuff that we couldn't have shown on our story about Shore. And even Stephen McCaddy, he pulled me aside and said, Tim, he says, I just got to ask you. He says, you're not making Eddie Shore look very good here. Is there any good traits we could talk about him? And I said, no. He goes, okay, I just wanted to ask.
Let's just close that book now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did an amazing job at being despicable in those movies. Great job.
The funny thing in there was that, so we didn't think we could get him, but we got him. And so then we thought, oh my God, what if he can't skate?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
What if he can't skate? So I had to go over and ask him if he could skate, which, asking the guy. So I'm kind of shooting the shit with him. And then he says, did you bring your own skates, or do you need? Oh, no, I'm going to need skates. And I go, you know how to skate, don't you? Boy, he glared at me. Yes, I know how to skate. Oh, all right. So, but he was. And I got to say, I think that he was one of the big reasons why the movie was successful was, Jared, of course, Sarah and Jared, but he played such a great Eddie Shore.
Yeah.
And that was such a great part of the movie. So, he Shore's life, there is a book about him out there. I forget what it's called, but just an absolute crazy life. He ended up owning the Ice Capades.
Yeah, that was an interesting little tidbit we learned from the movie as well. That
we pulled that up.
Also from Charlie, and we noticed this too in the second miniseries. Cindy wasn't mentioned as much. Now, is that just because of the era of life, like the part of your dad's life that we were talking about, or was there another reason why she wasn't in there?
No, that's because when we moved to Colorado, Cindy would have been 19 or 20, and she had moved to Kingston actually, and went to school in Kingston.
Right.
So, so she wasn't kind of that part of that, that era of being in Colorado. She had moved out, right, and was living in Kingston at the time.
Yeah, that's what we figured. Adrian in Maine. He was just asking if you thought your dad should have taken the Leafs offer instead of the Avs in hindsight.
That's a good question.
Well,
think,
why don't you answer it in two parts? At your age then, would you have been more excited going to Toronto? And now in hindsight, do you think he made the right choice?
No, I think I was excited to go to. I think Colorado was kind of where we had. I think kind of our mom and dad's mentality was that dad was going to be able to build something there, right?
Okay.
That they had a very raw team. They had just kind of turned over where they had some older players and gotten rid of them, and had some young players. And he thought that they would be able to build that team. And dad kind of had 3 or 4 years be a Stanley Cup contender. And then when we got there, it was just so different. And I have a conspiracy theory. You want to hear my conspiracy theory? I have a conspiracy theorist. So they didn't win as many games in Colorado as the year before my dad got there. But their attendance increased dramatically.
Right.
And they, and it was, and so they had a big season. They had a big season ticket push, and they most of the people signed up for their season seats. And I think that the owners of Colorado, this is just my opinion, at the time, who lived in New Jersey, wanted the team in New Jersey.
Oh.
And then 2 years after they fired dad, they just did a midnight run. They just pulled up to McNichols Arena, got all the equipment, and said, we're going to play in New Jersey. And even without the NHL saying okay, right? They had to deal with that later. Guy just said, we're doing it. So I wonder if that had something to do with it. But
well, they had to become Victor's favorite team, because that's the New Jersey Devils are Victor's team. So
yeah,
can't see that, Victor.
That's what they did. It was just a got up with midnight run. So it would have been interesting. I lived in the States all my life, right? Right. I lived in Rochester, so I never really even saw Hockey Night in Canada, right? Like I never didn't know how big the Leafs were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really even couldn't comprehend how big hockey was in Canada, because as I say, I lived my first, I never, like, I went to Kingston in the summer, but I didn't really understand how big hockey was. It would have been interesting anyway. It would have been a bit of a ride with Harold for sure.
Yeah. And final question here from Gord in Toronto. He's curious about your life growing up as Don's son. I mean, how did it impact you personally when you would hear all this negative attention that your dad would get?
You know what? I think you slowly kind of build up, you certainly build up a thick skin. I mean, you get fans and people giving it to dad when he was in Boston, and when they would go on a losing streak, you read stuff in the paper and all that, and you go to school and the kids would give you a hard time, and even the teachers would give me a hard time. So you kind of build up a bit of you build up a bit of a thick skin. You just sometimes I think they cross the line, but dad asked for it a lot. Like, a lot of times he'd go in Hockey Night in Canada and he'd say stuff knowing that Rosie Madonna was going to go nuts in the Toronto Star on her. And dad, so my mom when he'd come home, my mom go, why would you say that? He goes, I want to see what Rosie's going to rate tomorrow. And, he'd write that he's a troglodyte and a dinosaur and a misogynist and all that stuff. And so he asked for it a lot. And then by the time he got to Colorado and the time we got to Boston or to Toronto, it didn't bother me that much. I mean, you learn very quickly that you worry about what your friends think and not about what the outside world thinks.
I said that was my last question, but I lied, because what you just said reminded me of that last scene, not the last scene, but the penultimate scene in the last movie, that pep talk, that quote unquote pep talk he gives to that junior team after watching them blow the lead because they were celebrating too much.
Yeah.
Is that how that happened, or is that just an amalgamation of different scenes that he's...
No, that happened.
Really?
And I said, first of all, we're lucky that there was no cell phones back then, because I don't think dad would have had a career after that.
Wow.
And we couldn't use the words that dad went in. He goes, you F it. He just went off on these kids. And I knew it was going to happen, because I still remember it was at the Herb Carnegie rink in Toronto, and we're walking down the hallway, and you have to kind of pass the dressing rooms. The guy came out, and oh, Don, we're the team that lost, and can you say something to Dad? I'll say something to him. And I'm like, no, Dad, I gotta get going. I gotta get home. My wife had dinner on the
You knew it was a bad idea.
I knew it was a bad idea. And boy, did he rip into those kids.
That's
one
amazing.
of the best scenes.
Yeah, it was a great scene.
Their faces just dropped when Dad ripped into them, And you know what? Those kids have probably never been talked like that before.
Well, and I'm sure none of those kids will ever forget the day Don Cherry walked into their locker room. Yeah.
That became a hockey core memory for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, dropping the F-bomb in front of him. And I said, and looking back, as I said, if they had a somebody had a video, had a phone back then taping that, I think that would have been Dad's career back then.
Hey, Torch keeps coming back, so
yeah, that's true. And Babcock keeps coming back, so
yeah, anything's possible.
Victor, you have any final questions for Tim?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I love the fact that you kept mentioning Slapshot, because I think for anybody that watched Slapshot, I think it's criminal and a travesty if they haven't watched these two movies, because they're just, if not more, enjoyable, because it's a real story, and you get to learn, kind of the really backstory behind, especially if you grew up watching Don Cherry in Coach's Corner, you didn't really know about him as a player and a coach. I think that you do just a wonderful job of telling that story. And it's just, they're such great movies. They're so entertaining. They're so enjoyable. They're so well told. And if you love hockey, go and watch these movies. It's criminal not to.
I'll tell you a quick story about Slapshot. I got a friend of mine, Mitch Ness, and he's a director and producer. And he was a long time ago, he was down at the Molson Indy, and he was interviewing Paul Newman. And so he was with another producer, and Mitch was the cameraman. And the producer said, he goes, Mr. Newman, after they're all done, he says, I know this is totally, he says, not like legit. He says, like, it's out of order, but he pulled out a VHS copy of Slapshot. He says, could you autograph this? So Paul Newman says, well, you got to come into the trailer because I can't autograph anything out front. So they went to Paul Newman's trailer. My friend Mitch was going, why didn't I bring my copy? So, and Paul Newman took the movie, he took the VHS, and he says, he just stared at it for about 10, 15 seconds. And he says, this was such a great effing movie. And then he signed it. And I thought, wow. And so it was good to see that Paul Newman appreciated the movie as well.
Nice.
But yeah, Slapshot was, Dad took me to see that when I was 12 years old. He took me to the movie theater.
Right. Good for him.
The lady said, have you seen this movie? Do you know what kind of swearing there is in it? And Dad goes, he's heard it before. So.
Nice. So my question, so I was going to ask you, what do you think, what do you think the Leafs are going to do next year? But for our non-hockey listeners, the question I really want to know is, tell us a little bit about your relationship with Blue. I loved Blue so much. I only knew about Blue from the Rock'em Sock'em videos, because we really got to know him in those videos. But just tell us a little bit about Blue. I feel like you guys did such a great job with casting for Blue in the two movies. But it was very nostalgic watching it for myself. And maybe you can tell us about your relationship with him.
It's her, Victor. It's her, not him.
With Blue, yes.
Blue is a girl. So I'll tell you, like, we had dogs, we had animals all our lives, and we had a Maltese and we had a poodle, and they both passed. So Dad says, I'm going to get a dog that I want, because he's, Mom, you're getting a dog that Rose, you're getting a dog that you want. I want to get a dog. I want to get a bull terrier. And this was right around the time Dad had lost his job, and we couldn't, Dad, there was a scene in the movie where Dad's going from construction site to construction site, and really couldn't find a job. He literally was painting for $2 an hour. He was painting houses. And so we went to pick up Blue, and it was probably about a 6-hour drive to pick her up. But we didn't know what dog we were going to get. And what happened was, we were looking at what dogs. So they said, oh, this pup's good, or this pup's good. And we saw Blue running around. And Dad says, what about that dog? And she says, well, she's got blue eyes, and these were breeders, and that's a bad trait for bull terriers. We're going to put her down. And Dad says, well, I'll take her, and don't put her down. I'll take her. So he said, okay. And so we got her, and like the family's luck, Dad's luck, the family's luck, like turn around almost within a week of getting Blue. Like, and that's why it was so hard on the family when Blue passed away, because she went from like getting her when dad was making $2 an hour painting to the height of his coach's corner. And she was always part of that. And then, she became kind of famous when, um, uh, they asked dad always like, had pictures of her in his office and how tough she was and everything. And the Boston reporter says, "Who's in net tonight, Gilly or Cheevers?" And dad says, "Well, I talked it over with Blue, and she said put Gilly in tonight." And so it was Cherry's asked Dog tells Cherry to put Gilly in. So that became the running gag. And then she became, kind of became famous. And we put her on the Rock'em Sock'em covers, and she got onto things. And that was the one funny thing. I remember talking to a guy who was he was a psychologist or psychologist, I guess. And he says that's one reason why, he says, your dad's, he goes, popular. He goes, people know the name of his wife, Rose, and they know the name of his dog, Blue. And he said, so for some guy to walk up to Don and say, "Hey, Don, how's Blue?" which was always the opening. He says is an easy kind of opening, "Hello, how are you?" And dad would always say, "Oh, Sins can't be here, but sends her love," and then they could talk. And he says, it's like if you saw Paul Newman and you wanted to walk up to him, like, what would you say to him?
Right.
You, there's not that opening line, but if you knew his dog's name, you could say, "Hey, how's Blue doing?" So,
sure.
Yeah, Blue is, she was an amazing dog, and
such a good puppers.
Yeah. So she was, but she passed. We got one more. Dad got one more bull terrier, and then I got a bull terrier. So there's only even, and mine was named Powell, so there was only 2 Blues.
Very good, Matt. Your final question.
So really quick one, and then I'll make a couple comments. So, if given the opportunity, or maybe you are pursuing to make a 3rd series telling the back half, or the other side of your dad's story, would you do it?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Again, because I think Dad would be, his whole thing is, never complain.
Yeah, you
never explain.
that, yeah.
And if you're doing that, you're kind of, you're making excuses for your dad and all that. So, and I don't think it would be. I guess Jared would still. I guess they're playing order. You could get Jared again.
Yeah.
But
he's agents.
Yeah, I don't think. I don't think I would do it.
Okay, fair enough. So really my last comments are just thank you. This was such a pleasure. I really enjoyed the movies. It was so great. I mean, I've said, and they've mentioned, I'm not the hugest sports fan, but I love sports stories. Some of my favorite movies and shows and things like that are sports related. So it's kind of a funny parallel there. So I really enjoyed this telling of, regardless of how it all went down in the end, your dad's and your family name will be forever synonymous with Canadian sports in the best way. So it was great to see and take in and have a chance to really digest the story of your family. So thanks for coming on and telling us all about it. And we appreciate the hell of you, man. Thanks so much. And give your dad our best.
I will, for sure.
And how is your dad doing?
Oh, he's doing well. He was over, he didn't come over. I guess yesterday he came over to watch the Blue Jay game. And he just lives around the corner from me. So he's getting a little bit slower, a little bit, at 92, but
sure.
Still watches the Blue Jays and still watches the Leafs, and comes over all the time to watch the hockey and everything. Nice. So yeah, he's doing well.
Is he excited about McKenna?
I don't think he knows. It was funny. I asked him, and I asked another NHL superstar. I said, if you were McKenna's father, would you be happy he's going to Toronto? And Dad and this guy said no. I just hope they don't put too much pressure on the kid. I hope I don't want him
in
to
Toronto.
Get
Come on, how could that? Yeah. How could they do that?
I don't want him to get 50 points and they say, oh, he had just an okay season. Right? Like to jump from to be an 18-year-old to come into the National Hockey League is like super hard. I mean, you look at what Bedard. I mean, you thought he was going to light it up, and he's getting better and better and better, and he will be a massive superstar. But there's very few guys that walk in and turn the league on its head, if anybody. So I'll tell you one quick story about the movie. Okay.
Yes, please.
This is my favorite story.
Yeah. Don't leave anything untold, please.
Yeah. So one of the things we were like, there was the hill for me to die on in the movie was we weren't going to try to recreate the NHL scenes of Guy Lafleur going down and scoring on Julie Gilbert. And I said, I have all this footage, and I said, let's, we'll use the footage and then just have Jared behind the bench and we'll cut back and forth. And Jeff Wolna and I think his name was Lee, our editor. They did a great job. I mean, I really thought that really made the movie. And because I said, if you're going to try to find a guy that looks like Guy Lafleur, that can skate like Guy Lafleur, can shoot the puck like Guy Lafleur, he'd be in the NHL. Right. So you're not going to find somebody to do that. And then that's always going to kill the look of the stuff. So I think that was a big thing. But so I said, but we'll actually reproduce the minor leagues because you're in smaller rinks and we can do it like that. But we had to get the old tube skates, right?
Right.
So what happened was, we got a casting call. So we had guys, the extras that were playing, half of them are from the Manitoba Moose, who are from the American Hockey League,
right?
And the Brandon Wheat Kings from Junior A. So they're, top-notch hockey players, right? So we get them, and the guys with the shorter hair, we said, okay, you're going to be the minor league guys in the 50s and 60s. So we went and got all the tube skates we could get, I think, in Canada, brought them back, got them all sharpened. And so we had the guys go around and they were skating in their skates, on their new skates back in 2010. So then we said, okay, you older, you guys are going to play older guys here. You got to use these skates. Well, the guys couldn't skate in them. Like they literally could not skate in them. Like they were like they were on their ankles. And I'm like, holy shit, what are we going to do? Like these guys can't skate on this stuff. So the one guy who was playing the American Hockey League goes, how the hell did Bobby Orr and Rock Richard skate in these things? So we went and got tape. We tried to tape up their ankles, but it wouldn't work. So what we had to do was we decided to get their skates and then we painted them flat black. And then we painted the blades silver. And so they could skate, you really wouldn't notice it. But when we needed to show a close up of the guy standing, then they would go on the other skates, like that. But I remember walking out going, holy crap, what are we going to do? These guys can't skate in these tube skates. So we just said, well, I remember Jeff saying, well, what are you going to do? I said, we can't do it like this. These guys look horrible.
Yeah, it looks like Timbit hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, it was. So that was one of my first big panics was before you even get shooting, how are we sure we're going to make the guys look okay? Awesome. So all the old guys and like myself that skated in those tube skates, we were better skaters than those guys because we didn't need the fancy boots they had.
You got to show the kids how it was done.
Yeah.
And speaking of the younger players from the 50s and 60s, one other Letterkenny time we didn't talk about was Tyler Johnson playing your dad as a teenager. And he did a great job, we thought too. I mean, it wasn't that straight kind of impression of your dad, but we didn't know what he was like that age. But just the mere fact that he was also a bit of an athlete, he could skate and but the hilarious part there we found is that he's only a couple years younger than Jared Kiso, and he's playing.
He's got such a baby face, yeah.
So
I know. That was funny. That was Jeff Wolna saw him and really liked him.
Yeah.
And thought he's a guy that could do this. He really liked him. And I think Rick Skeen, he's he was our stunt coordinator, and his kids were playing. In fact, I think one of his kids played Battleship Kelly the first night. I forget his first name.
Dan Skeen.
Now I think they're directing and doing the thing in there. So
that was another tie-in that I found. I was like, that guy looks familiar, and I had to look him up. And when I saw the name Skeen, I'm like, wait a minute. And so it all comes together.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a lineage there.
Another thing that was we was oblivious, or the omission of this was very obvious. Was there was nothing about Rock'em Sock'em hockey in the movies. We were a little disappointed in that.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't know why.
Did you guys not want to tell that part of the story, or was it was too far off from the main?
I think it was just we had to cut so much stuff out, right? Like there's so many things that we wanted to do and wanted to tell, and even we really we wanted to do a bunch of the kind of some of the funny stuff that happened with Dad and Ron on the road,
Mhm.
and we never really got into that.
Yeah.
So there was just so much stuff we cut out of the
Sure.
first part of the American Hockey League. And then with Dad, there was just so many things that we just had to let go. So
I think
plus, I don't think Steve wanted us to self-promote.
I think you missed an opportunity to see Jared Kiso as your father rapping the Rock'em Sock'em theme.
Yeah, Rock'em Sock'em techno. Yeah,
let's go.
Yeah.
All right, Tim, you've been great tonight. Thank you so much for you giving us more. We've taken more time than we asked for. We appreciate you coming
problem.
out tonight. Is there anything you're working on or that you'd like to shed light on before we let you go?
Not too much. I'm kind of semi-retired. I'm working with one jump. So speaking of Rock'em Sock'em, we're just kind of exploring, kind of doing a little documentary on Rock'em Sock'em of the 30 years.
Oh, cool.
Talking about I think the cultural impact in Canada that it had.
Yeah.
Just it was such a Christmas favorite. Our sales.
We talked about that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Our sales started December 1st. And ended December 27th. We didn't sell one, right? Yeah. So there was this 3-week span where we had to make sure that we had a sweet spot. And then talking just about the whole how hockey changed through that 30 years and all that. So I'm working on that, and then
cool.
I'm working on a documentary with a friend of mine who about a crime that happened in Toronto in 1993. There were stolen letters from bookstore David Mason, who I used to go and buy books from for Dad, because Dad was a big reader. He read a lot of books, and he liked biographies and old books on Nelson and Drake and T. Lawrence, and and then David had letters of Ernest Hemingway, Scott Fitzgerald, and Maury Callahan,
right?
And they were worth $1 million.
Wow.
And they were stolen out of his safe in his store, and went unsolved for 2 years. The police found a kid that was involved in it, and then they put him in jail, and then he was found dead in his cell, and it's still unsolved. And then it just about 2 weeks ago, there was a Hemingway conference in Toronto, and my friend Mitch and I talked about it, and we even got one of the audience members gave us a new lead about the crime, and so we're trying to get that off the ground too.
Oh wow,
so,
interesting.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting. It's again, it's around sports, where Maury Callahan, who's 5'5", he was boxing with Ernest Hemingway, who's 6 foot, and probably late heavyweight, and this guy was a welterweight, Maury Callahan, and Maury Callahan knocked him down. And but it got into the paper that Maury Callahan knocked him out, and Hemingway got all mad and wrote all these nasty letters to him, and he wrote back, and Fitzgerald got involved and all that. And so these letters are really kind of, when you read them, they're really cool. How Hemingway says, "Dear Morley, how you doing? How's the wife? I'm going to kill you next time I see you. Your writing's really going well. You're a piece of shit. I'm going to knock you out when I see." It's all this manic kind of, how's it going, and all that. So we're trying to get that up and going. Cool. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't know who Hemingway or Fitzgerald are nowadays, which is kind of crazy. So
that's too bad.
Yeah, but just just having a good time and just kind of relaxing and picking up some projects, doing some writing, and have been just kind of waiting for the hockey season, waiting for the Leafs to make the playoffs and go do a deep run.
Amazing. Well, we'd love to have you back on to talk about any one of those projects, especially the Rock'em Sock'em, because that's a favorite of ours too. So if ever that comes out, or when that comes out, let us know. We'll have you back on, and we'll amplify it wherever we can.
Sounds great. Okay, appreciate it. Thanks, guys. This was lots of fun, and a nice trip down a memory lane for me. I haven't, I was kind of watching some clips and stuff yesterday. I hadn't watched it for a while.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you again so much for your time today, Tim. I'm just going to play us off here. Stick around. We'll talk in a second.
Okay.
Here we go. And that's all we have for this episode. Tomorrow night, we gather with a bunch of our listeners for an after party and to talk about the Don Cherry movies. Until then, if you'd like to support the podcast, become a patron. You'll get a shout out on the show, exclusive bonus content, early access to interviews, and your own ad-free podcast. Another great way to support us is by telling a friend about the podcast, leaving us a review. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky at Protestant Pod. Shoutouts as always to our bud Ian Service for the live stream and to our friends at the Sonar Network. Our intro and outro themes are by Poise for the Worm. You can find their music on all streaming platforms. Thank you for joining us. Now we're headed to the after party to have a drink with our new friend Tim. On behalf of Tim, Victor, Matt, and myself, thank you for listening. Have a great week.